So the subject of this morning's video is emotional regulation.
Yeah, too many times we walk into a family and the parents are very dysregulated. They
Just about always.
and that becomes the first thing that we work on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really important topic.
And it's important to know that when I say just about all of our parents to some degree are dysregulated, it doesn't mean that that's a problem. In actuality, just being a good parent, trying to connect to a child that has emotional trauma that has in their history, that child has learned to exist in a dysregulated way. And as the parent tries to connect to that, it's perfectly natural to become a little more dysregulated than you used to be.
One thing I noticed, and I want to add this to our board, our emotional regulation board, many people don't know how to spell dysregulated.
My spell check kicks it out all the time.
Always. Yeah. It's DYS. Dysregulated. So keep that in mind. It's a dysregulated parent. And that just means it's someone that can't handle intense emotions for any length of time. That the emotions are overwhelming and they just lose it. Yeah.
Well, everybody has a natural point in their system where they turn scared into mad, where their brain moves from the thinking part, mm-hmm. the cognitive part of their brain, to the back part of their brain, and the back part of the brain is designed to try to distance itself from that trigger. When little babies are born, that's the first part of the brain they have, that limbic brain. That's the first part that's really functioning and running the show. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things it does is it manages emotions.
Yeah. Well, that's why babies cry, is they let us know that there's something going on. That's mm-hmm. their means to communicate.
They do indeed.
And they tell us, come fix this problem. I have a problem. Come help me.
Now, as these brains develop and the frontal cortex begins to develop in them and they become more thinking entities and they have personalities behind them, then they begin to impact that limbic brain response that's supposed to cry out when they feel scared. But up until that point, that's really the part of them that's running the show. So kids, naturally, the younger they are, the more they're supposed to dysregulate.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because we've worked with so many parents now, some of them didn't have really good childhoods. And they may not have had that adult to help them calm down that limbic brain, that back brain. And so for them, dysregulation is really easy. It's more of a go-to.
So their set point might be a little lower than some other ones.
Yes.
A lot of people don't think about parenting in these terms, but one of the basic functions that we perform as parents is teaching our children how to regulate their emotions. Yeah. And it's one of those things, like most parenting, it's not done with directive statements. Calm your butt down. Yeah. Stop that right now.
What's the old, don't do as I do, but do as I say, and that doesn't work.
The real teaching that we perform is in how we handle our emotions. What happens within us, because the children are always watching us. I many times I've walked into homes and I've heard that mothers in particular tell me, I can't even go to the bathroom without them knocking on the door and coming in and wanting to watch.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. That's a kid's job. A kid's job is to watch us mm-hmm. and see how we handle life. And for the purposes of this video, how we handle emotion. Yeah. Because that becomes how they're going to do it.
That's why for us to be working with the parents on their ability to stay emotionally regulated is so vitally important. If we have a dysregulated parent, we have to get them through that, help them mm-hmm. see a whole different world. And sometimes it truly is a different world for these people.
And when you bring a child into your home in foster and adopt situations that have already been taught mm-hmm. how to live in a dysregulated state with dysregulated parents, what their brains try to do is their brains try to treat the new environment exactly that way. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a source of anger or dysregulation for the healthy parents that are bringing these children in and trying to work with them.
I've had so many moms in particular tell me they don't know where all that rage comes from. It's like mm-hmm. this stuff just bubbles up in them. They don't understand where this intense emotion's coming from. and therefore, if they don't know where it's come from, they also don't know how to manage it,
Exactly.
and it becomes
Exactly.
so.
And
difficult.
one of the scariest things about bringing these traumatized children into your home is we don't have the big dysregulated question is always the one that every parent has asked. The one, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why did because it's a dysregulating experience as a parent. To have a behavior in your child in front of you that you can't make sense of. You can't figure out why this occurred. At some level, I think we all understand it. If we can't figure out why this occurred,
No.
then how can we help them overcome it?
A lot of our parents come to us and say, my child's up all night eating, or they're roaming through through the house, or they break all their toys, or they do their homework but won't turn it in. And those are all scary
Yeah.
behaviors to have, and when you can't make sense of it, it dysregulates. Like, you go into this mode of like, I don't know what to do about this, and it gets really scary.
So often we don't think about that, but there is two fears going on concurrently. One is the fear of the actual behavior itself and the losses that could incur from it. And then the secondary fear is not knowing how to stop it,
Yeah.
which is sometimes more terrifying than actually the behavior itself.
And many of the parents, they'll fall back on their old parenting skills, and the more they do that, the worse the behaviors get.
Yeah.
The more scared that they get,
Yeah.
and then then there's this downward spiral that families get into. It's like, behaviors, consequences don't work, makes the behaviors worse, and they just go on and on and on, and then we walk into a family system that's just ready to blow apart. So that's
What makes it so bad is that dysregulated response of stop this right now. While it uses fear, it's designed to make the behavior stop immediately. Short-term distancing from the trigger. The problem is that same anger and that same nonverbal message on the parent's face confirms for the child that they're still in a dangerous environment and that they're not safe.
Right, and a lot of our parents will report dad is more successful in the behavior world because of that stern voice, and they can be louder.
Yeah, I think we use anger or fear-based interventions a little bit more successfully than you, in most cases.
Therefore, there's this kind of an assumption that occurs in that family is mom's ineffective and dad's a power to be reckoned with. But as you and I have both watched, that tends to fade over time.
Yeah.
And then the dad
While fear is an excellent short-term motivator, in the long term, it just sort of drifts into the background and becomes part of everything else, and it loses its ability to motivate.
Yeah.
Now, in our model, what we try to teach people is that thinking is done in the front brain, where the emotion of fear and anger, those are conducted primarily in the back brain. It's a pretty researched subject on anger, and one of the things that we know is that even for all of us, even for healthy people, when people get angry, the frontal cortex begins to drop offline. It begins, a few neural connections at a time, it drops down to where eventually the more angry or the more dysregulated you become, more of your behavior comes from this limbic brain, which again is not the thinking part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that was running the show when the baby was born. The problem with that, of course, is as we grow older, and in parenting in particular, you can't always make the triggers go away.
No.
Successfully handling life becomes more and more idea of dealing with the triggers in such a way that we remain functional.
So I like the idea, and it's been really helpful to the families when we teach them those two parts of the brain.
Yeah. Yep.
That are you in the thinking brain, or are you in the emotional brain? And for them to watch for their kids, which part of the brain are they in, is really helpful.
And we should mention at this point, for the you neuroscientists out there, we are greatly simplifying this.
Yes.
Greatly simplifying it. But for parents who are struggling in the day-to-day trenches, the simplification is important. And we should note that when you're in the back brain, when your brain is trying to make the thing that's scaring you stop, that's really not parenting. That's survival. Parenting is done in the thinking part of your brain up front. It's explaining to people It's explaining to children how they handle those emotions.
Yeah. So we're wondering for our audience, which part of the brain do you spend most of your time in? Are you in the thinking brain or the emotional brain? And are you able to see that in your family, which part of the brain is pretty much running the show? So thank you for watching.